What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. We come to you each and every week to talk to you about the business of moto. Guests in the industry that have done incredible things, guests in the industry that are building incredible things, and sometimes even special guests from outside the industry that can bring you some incredible knowledge to help you build your moto career. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I got a great guest for you today. Before we dive in, though, obviously want to do some housekeeping and give a thanks to the folks that allow us to be able to come to you regularly and bring these awesome guests. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for RacerX. They always have a lot of great subscription and renewal offers. You can grab your subscription or your renewal and whatever free prize they have up for grabs at racerxonline.com/Moto Marketing. Obviously, our friends at Michelin Bicycle Tires, or Michelin in general, you know that I have an e-bike team. I talk about it often on here. Our guest is very closely related to our e-bike team. So we'll dive into that in a minute. But Michelin Bicycle Tires, you can always check them out at michelinbicycletires.com. Also 100%, ride100%.com. If you need some moto goggles, if you need some moto apparel, ride100%.com. Those guys always have a great offering. And then obviously my company, Impakt Results. Look, we work with moto brands. We work with cycling brands, folks that sell their products online. That's who we work with. And if you're in need to generate more sales for your business, whether it's in motorcycling or bicycling, be sure to check us out. You can always shoot me an email. It's luke@thinkimpact.com, or you can just hit me up on Instagram, whatever's easiest for you. All right, today's guest is somebody that I've got to know over the last couple of years by going to the GNCC events, by running and managing my e-bike team, somebody I've got a lot of respect for. He does a lot of really awesome things in the moto community as well as the cycling community. We have specialized channel developer, which we'll talk about what that is. Earlin Rosa on the podcast with us today. Erlan, I've been wanting to get you on for some time, man. I appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that don't know, Erlan, you see him at quite a few GNCC events, and I'm sure, Erlan, you can be found around the country, but Erlan, you've been with Specialized for some time. What I always like to do is just kind of take it back and let you explain to everybody what exactly it is that you do, and we'll kind of take your story from there.
Well, I've been in the bicycle industry since the 70s, so I'm giving away my age. But I started with Specialized in the early 2000s. I've been here for about roughly 18 years. Started out as a market developer for the Northeastern territories, and then did a bunch of different things with Specialized, and eventually ended up as a channel developer.
So when you tell somebody you're a channel developer, what for those that don't know, what exactly does that entail? What does a channel developer do?
Well, that's the fun part, because it creates some conversation. But basically, what we're looking at is the opportunities outside the bicycle industry. And this is a good one. I mean, motorsports has been one of those channels that has grown for us. But, the old saying, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, is just plain crazy, right? It was something that hit me pretty strongly. And the founder of the company kind of empowered us to go and allowed me to really kind of get out there and find other channels to introduce people to bicycles. And because electric bikes had come on fairly quickly in the US, we've been doing it quite some time in Europe. It was kind of a new vehicle for a lot of people. I tend to call it a mobility vehicle rather than a bicycle or an electric bike, because a lot of people are using it for commuting. So the idea here really is to find new riders, grow the industry.
So I think the GNCC community is so interesting, because I grew up racing BMX. I'm a bigger guy, so I was never the cross country, enthusiast, and I did a little bit of downhill here and there, but I grew up racing BMX. And a friend of mine who we both know, Colin Dearman, who's a general manager at a Specialized bike shop in Morgantown, he introduced me to e-biking in 2019. And My company does the digital marketing for GNCC, but I wasn't a regular at those events. And he said, man, we do these e-bike races. They're at GNCC. I went to I went to the John Penton in Millfield, Ohio in 2019. I had purchased the Kenevo before that, and I was hooked. And I remember when I showed up, and it's grown a lot even since 2019, but when I showed up, I was blown away how many specialized turbo levos, Kenevos were there. Fast forward to 2022, a weekend or so ago, we had the Snowshoe GNCC, and a friend of mine and well-known name in the motorcycle industry, Paul Parabionosa, works for Renthal. He flew out for business, but we set him up with one of the turbo levos that you guys have provided us and allowed him to race. And he races back in California as well. The first thing he said to me when I found him up at the Snowshoe Village was, man, I cannot believe how many of these e-bikes, there's thousands of e-bikes here. And they're all primarily specialized, which is awesome. Talk to me about the evolution of that, because I think a lot of people are getting into e-biking, but I can't think of anywhere else in the world to where you can go to one event and see as many e-bikes as a GNCC in one place. It's really, really cool. So, you know, you're talking about cross promoting and introducing to new channels. And I think GNCC being in the motorsports obviously is one you guys are focused on. Talk to us about the evolution of that and how you've seen just e-biking grow and people on specialized bikes grow at those events.
Well, before we got involved with GNCC, I was still an outside rep for upstate New York, and there was a small shop in Cortland, Action Sports, and Matt Belknap actually was telling me about some of his friends that were racing motorcycles but starting to age out, and we had basically come out with a fat e-bike, a fat tired e-bike that, you know, we were probably 2 or 3 years too early with. We didn't do well with them. We discounted them and sold them out, and they were gone. But what I was noticing was that a lot of the people that were purchasing were motorcyclists, or they were hunters. And that kind of tuned me out into thinking about other opportunities outside of bicycle shops. And, you know, how can we bring these people back in to look at new products? Fast forward, Matt was also extremely rough. He just did not want to carry electric bikes. I mean, if somebody came in and asked for it, he would sell it. But I can still remember him and his son saying, Dad, this is going to be the next big thing. And him saying, no, I'll never carry them. And I showed up with a Sprinter van with a handful of bikes. And he called a couple of his buddies that were racing GNCC. They jumped on them, thought they were great, immediately purchased 2 of them. And that started the whole revolution. From that, you know, Matt and I were going down to GNCC. We started doing a few demos. I think the first one I did was at the one in New York. I'm trying to remember, the Tomahawk. Mm-hmm. And what really sold me on it was the simple fact that people are so considerate. And you know, it just extremely polite, very nice, and the kids absolutely loved it. They lined up. They were super polite about, you know, waiting their turn for the bike, and if a kid didn't come back in 20 minutes, they went out looking for them, and then, you know, they'd hand it off to the next kid that was in line rather than just taking it themselves. So it kind of proved to me that, you know, I was on the right track. And then eventually, you know, I thought about it, and I thought, you know, wouldn't it be kind of cool if we could actually create a bike race here? And unbeknownst to me, I mean, Kerry had already started digging into it and tried to do it with another brand, but it failed miserably, primarily because, one, the bike wasn't strong enough to handle that type of terrain, and 2, they were still trying to ride on the you know, the courses that were already made for motorcycles and quads. So the bikes just really never had a chance there, and it was a bit too rough for them. So, you know, that end of fall, I sat down with Tim Carter. We basically went through what it would take to be a presenting sponsor. We talked to Kerry and you know, kind of told him exactly what we were looking for and how we wanted to do it. And we came to an agreement, and it took off. You know, that first year I raced it, had a lot of fun. Colin was the guy I was always chasing.
I I forgot that you actually did compete in it the first year or so. I forgot about that.
It was great. And seeing Charlie Mullins out there getting back on a bike and getting into his norm of being a champion. It was just a lot of fun, and seeing it grow, makes me feel really good about what we did. But it opened it up to not just racers. The family members started using them to get out there and see the tracks. And then before long, you're seeing all these little kids on these bikes, and you realize that you were building a culture within a culture. So it was a lot of fun, and it continues to grow. The e-bike market in general is probably the biggest growing market of cycling in the U.S. But I don't see it stopping anytime soon. We're slowing down. In fact, we're gearing up, expecting this next year to be an even bigger year than we've ever had. And COVID was huge for us. Sure. As far as electric bikes are concerned, I mean, anybody can be a rider now. And that's what I think is great, because it's all inclusive. It's not about, oh, I'm super fit, I can climb that, that 10,000 foot climb in so many, at whatever speed. It really just comes down to the fact that, whether you're old, young, you haven't been on a bike in 20, 30 years, you're out of shape, whatever it might be, an electric bike will get you back out there. You'll have fun. You'll go anywhere you want to go. And the funny thing is, I see a lot of people riding electric bikes that are converting over to analog bikes, right? Because they're getting into shape. And on the same token, I'm seeing a lot of people using electric bikes as a form of a recovery from injuries. So there are so many opportunities, but probably 6-7 years ago, when I first really started moving them around and showing them to dealers, I'd get beat up by the younger guys telling me it was a form of cheating. And I used to turn it around and go, when I was your age, I never thought that I would ever be on a motorized bicycle. However, think about it this way. When you're in your 20s, when's the last time you rode with your dad and your dad was able to keep up with you? Yeah. Or your wife, your mom, your significant other. The other end of that also is we've got a lot of wounded warriors. We've got a lot of amputees out there. There are a lot of people that are looking to do something with their lives besides stay at home and watch TV. And this was a vehicle that got them there. So it's the Specialized, and look, e-bikes in general are such an amazing tool. And I mean, I make I don't try to hide the fact that I'm a massive fan of the Specialized brand. I mean, I have been since you guys made BMX bikes, other than, once you guys stopped making BMX bikes, then I had to buy some other brands. But other than that, I've only my entire life ridden Specialized bicycles. So I'm obviously a massive fan of the brand. And now we're lucky enough for you guys to be one of our main supporters and sponsors for our team. But the reason I'm such a fan is, one, the quality of the product is amazing. But two, we're talking about all these different walks of life and scenarios of how somebody can use an e-bike. But real life scenarios, I'll share a couple. I mean, you guys have a product called the Como, and my mom and dad, I'm adopted. I'm 32, 33. My parents are older than normal 33-year-olds parents would be. They're maybe the age of somebody's grandparents. So my dad's in his 70s. My mom's in her late 60s. I've ridden bikes my entire life. I've never gone on a bike ride with my parents. They just were intimidated by an analog, traditional style bike. They got a couple of Comos last year. They ride all the time together. So now I can be on my, non-powered road bike, and they can actually go for a ride with me. I could be doing a really hard workout, and my dad can be keeping pace and not working very hard. Flip side, I'm a heavier guy. So when I go on a road bike ride with some of the more fit individuals that I'm friends with, I cannot, and I live in West Virginia, it's really hilly, I can't keep up with these people. So I have why did I just blank out, Erlan? The gravel road bike. The Creo. I have the Creo, and which is essentially can be used as a road bike or a gravel bike, but it allows me to keep pace with some of these guys. And I'll be climbing a hill and I'll be more out of gas than they are they're on a regular bike, but I'm keeping pace. And then you look at the mountain bike style lineups, the Levo, the Kenevo, and just
there's somebody on our team that has had a pretty notable past and history with health problems. And at one point he was pushing 400 pounds. Now he's in the 250s and he's racing these events. Like these bikes, there's a bike for any type of riding style, and they do so much. If you're not part of the GNCC community, you might not see it, but there's so much you can do with it. That, yeah, when you hear somebody say like, oh, that's a cheater bike, like I don't know. I always compare it to when snowboards became a thing and skiers didn't want them on the mountain. I feel like we're kind of going through that transition now, but you have these purists that are jumping on board with it. And look, Specialized has been around for years. If there's a purist, Specialized is a pure brand. Like you guys only are and stand for one thing, and it's cycling. And you guys have opened that door to so many different people. Is that your main focus, Erlan? Like as far as, the different styles of bikes, are you primarily, do you get a focus solely on introducing e-bikes to the world, or are you also focused on the downhill line, the road cycling, the cross-country mountain biking lines as well?
Well, for me personally, it starts with e-bikes, because that does cross over into many other channels. And
sure.
As far as the analog bike, I mean, that's what a bicycle dealer is there for. But as it grows, we're also noticing that, for instance, motorsports, when we started opening them, there were quite a few motorsports that wanted to be a full line dealer and have become that, and are doing as well, and in some cases better than the independent bicycle dealer in that same area. So, it's about passion. It's typical of business. If you have a passion for something, you're going to do very well. On the other hand, if you're just sitting in a store waiting for people to walk in and purchase something from you, it's going to be a little rougher. So I think that we're starting to see a transition, especially with e-bikes, in IBD brands, or in independent bike dealers, where there were an awful lot that refused to carry electric bicycles. And that kind of led to finding other sources to sell them at. And now they're starting to see the obvious, which is that's the growth area. So now they're starting to embrace electric bikes as well. And that's a good thing, because, I mean, look, everybody buys differently. The guy that wants motorcycle parts doesn't necessarily go into a motorcycle shop. He goes online, or he goes to a parts dealer. It's the same thing with bicycles. Not everybody wants to go into a bicycle shop. Not everybody wants to go to a motorcycle shop. So you have to have that product in places where people are shopping and buying. So by looking at different channels and figuring out where those markets are,
yeah,
you're gaining more traction. I think of it as we're growing the industry. It's not just Specialized; it's the entire industry.
Specialized has always been a brand that you guys are so forward thinking on everything you do. Like, and number one, the marketing behind Specialized is the storytelling around the products is amazing. So you see all these things that go into like the wind tunnel, like you guys really make that a centerpiece of your marketing. You show all the ways you can advance the riding gear, the helmets, and there's all this technology and science that goes behind that. But one of the main reasons I've liked Specialized e-bicycle products as much as I have, I'll be honest, man, I think some of the other brands are getting better, but man, the other brands that are out there, a lot of them, they're ugly. Like it looks like a bicycle that somebody slapped a battery on. It doesn't look like a bicycle that I would want it to look. Specialized, on the other hand, from the first generation to now, they've looked cool. Like obviously you can tell there's something different from that than a stump jumper, but they don't look like a bulky e-bike with a battery attached to it. I mean, what goes into that? I know a lot of times you guys are developing products years out, so you're probably tired of the 2022 by the time it comes available. Is that something that goes on too with the e-bikes as well? Because the way that you guys lay the carbon fiber, like everything about it is just so forward thinking compared to a lot of your competitors that still look like they've taped the battery to a bicycle and here we go. What goes into that process that you can speak to at least?
Well, first of all, you have a single owner, Mike Sinyard, who has always thought the outside the box. I mean, he started selling in 1974 with a bicycle and a trailer behind it, and he was importing Campagnola and Chinelli products from Europe. Typical entrepreneur, and built it from there. Started a tire company, and then eventually built the first production mountain bike, which ended up in the Smithsonian. It was called the Stump Jumper. Imagine that. So he's always been pushing the edges to see how far we can go with product. And to be quite frank, when you talk about analog bikes now, with carbon being the main manufacturing product of frames, there's only so far you can push that. So the wind tunnel was something that you could add additionally and actually prove by number just how fast this product was, or how much more efficient it was comparatively to other brands. The thing that really sets us apart from other e-bike brands out there is the fact that we don't buy a frame from one company and buy a motor from another company and then, put it all together and slap our name on it. I mean, the geometries depict analog bikes. The Levo is a stump jumper, the Kenevo, an enduro. And we go back to manufacturers of motors and suspensions, and we tell them this is the experience that this needs to be. We're not taking something off the rack and putting it on our bike. Everything is designed with a specific experience. And that kind of sets us apart from everybody else, because we're not just trying to sell bikes, we're trying to sell an experience. We want you to have the best time on whatever type of ride you're doing. And that's the way we build our bikes. The rider is always first. The rider is the boss. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never thought of it that way. Just that a lot of the other brands probably are buying, somebody else's design and then, putting it together. And again, look, a lot of them have gotten better, but I say that as kind of like tip of the cap to Specialized, because I know that they're chasing the look. I mean, like when a Specialized rolls up and you've got most any other brand, like the Specialized looks more like a bike. And I think that they see how, obviously the product that you guys are moving, and they want to replicate that. And look, we've had some other brands on here, and I know that they're getting better, and things, obviously e-biking is, it's a big market and they are improving, but I feel like you guys you've led the way. Like up until this year, if you showed up to a GNCC race and you're going to put whatever bike you had through that ringer of an event, because it is very hard on your bike, if you were going to compete in that event, chances are, unless you had a Specialized, the bike was not going to finish. One of the main reasons was the battery couldn't withstand it. And in a lot of cases, that's still the case. As a bigger rider, I can't jump on another brand with a smaller battery and expect to finish that race. Can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of the battery? And I would assume there's probably a lot of focus that goes into that aspect of the product. From, you don't want it to be too heavy, but you want it to last as long as possible. That's a massive part of the e-biking experience, whether it's road or mountain bike. Can you talk a little bit about some of it that goes into that as far as that technology?
To a point. I'm not the most technical when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but ultimately, what you find, we don't try to make a bike where we can capitalize on a huge profit. The idea is that we want the bike to last for years and years. We want the battery to continue to work for you for many, many years. So everything is about, again, the rider. So a 700 watt hour battery obviously is a much better use than a 500 watt hour battery, which is what we were using the first year of GNCC. And even Charlie Mullins was getting to a point where, that last lap, he might run out of battery. So the 700 watt hour was an upgrade, and now it's on most of our bikes at this point, except for the base models of Levo. And it makes it that much easier for the consumer to purchase something knowing that, they're not going to get up into the middle of the woods and run out. One of the biggest problems with electric bikes in general, or one of the biggest concerns for consumers buying electric bikes, is range anxiety. It's probably the first question: how far can I go, or how long can I ride? And there's a lot of things that play a part in figuring out how far they are able to go. But obviously, if you've got a bigger battery, a stable battery, one that charges quickly, it's going to put their mind at ease. And that's really what we've done, by having a 700 watt hour battery, the way it's packed, we continuously are trying to improve on it. It all just comes down to trying to make the consumer feel better, and that they're not going to, get halfway through the ride and end up having to either try to find a place to charge, which now they have to remember they brought their charger with them, or, it becomes a bicycle and now it's a 50-pound bicycle that they're riding home. So, a lot of those things really come into play. And how many people are out there riding beyond 7 hours? Not too many. Most of us, it's a 2-hour, 3-hour, at most 4-hour ride. And those batteries are certainly capable of all of that.
Sure.
Even on turbo. So, again, it's more to put their mind at ease and to give the consumer what they're looking for, which is distance and time.
Erlan, as we kind of wrap up, for those that have seen on the internet, or maybe have seen a buddy of theirs that have the bike and they're not part of the GNCC community, they don't always have the opportunity to be around those at scale like those events provide, but they're interested in it. Where can they learn more? Are there demos that are maybe happening at different parts of the country, and maybe they can learn about how they could find those demos, or at the very least, what's the best way for somebody to try to get involved and get on one of these, whether it's a Creo, a Levo, a Kenevo, whatever it is?
Well, you can go to our website and look up our brand experience. There are 6 demo fleets out there around the country, and they're working every weekend doing exactly that, getting new people on bikes. So you can check your area to see where they're going to be at what time. You can also inquire through Find a Dealer. That'll tell you whether or not they've got bikes to either demo or rent. So you've got a number of different ways to actually find a place to test ride our bikes pretty easily. And quite honestly, I think almost everybody is willing to allow you to test ride a bike. It might not be out in the woods like a GNCC, but at least you'll get a good taste of what you're getting yourself into. And quite frankly, again, the Levo is just scratching the surface. You talk about the Como, the Vado, the Creo. These are bikes that I think that are going to be a much bigger portion of the e-bike community, just because it's mobility. It's getting them from point A to point B, whether it be down a carriage road or a paved road. There's a lot more of those people out there. And bicycle shops, all our different channels have the ability to definitely demo those out. So
yeah. Well, and before I let you go, I want to, thank you for obviously supporting the e-bike team, but even more than that, for those that don't understand, you and Specialized, your involvement in GNCC is a massive component of allowing them to be successful the last couple of years. You're one of the main title sponsors of the series, which isn't cheap. And your guys' dedication to the sport and wanting to grow your brand as a byproduct helps all the thousands of GNCC fans that show up to these events and have a great time. You guys contribute to them being able to do that. So I appreciate that. I know you guys are doing some cool things on the motocross series as well. And man, I mean, you got my mom and dad on bicycles, and it's allowed them to be more active. They're older and they need to be out doing those things. Your product has allowed them to do that. And I know that I'm not the only person that can say that. So I think it's really cool what you've done. You guys allow me to have a lot of fun, my team to have a lot of fun, people of all ages. If you guys have not checked out Specialized product, go to a local dealer, or like Erlan said, look it up and see where you can get involved. And the quote that I heard a long time ago, and I still believe it to be 100% true, don't ride one of these things until you're ready to buy one, because they are very, very, very addictive. And when you get on it, you will want to buy one, and you will buy one. So if you're at a GNCC event, if it's an e-bike round, be sure to stop by and see our team. We're always going out and doing test rides and pre-riding the course. And we always invite, folks new to come out and try one of our bikes, or if Erlan and his crew are there, they're doing demo rides. So Yeah, some great stuff that Specialized is doing. Erlan, it's always fun to see at the races, man. And I appreciate you making time for us and coming on here today. And yeah, we'll see you, at the races and be riding here soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Luke.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impakt Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpakt.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.